Welcome. Everybody know why you're here? No. Stakeholder Advisory Annual General Meeting for MCS. Okay, so I'm going to open the proceedings tonight, and I'm also going to be facilitating the conversation a little bit later. So my name is Stuart Jackson, and over here you'll see Ian. Ian's going to be drawing what's being said so that we can help capture the important themes and agenda items for you this evening. So we will have some roving microphones left and right. We will work with those as fast as we can, and hopefully as the conference or the exhibition today starts to settle, the background noise will also settle a little bit. Can everybody hear me okay? Great, fantastic. Okay, so well, without further ado, I'm going to ask Tim to come and open us.
Great, thank you very much for that. I'll add to that, welcome to the new format, Strategic Advisory Group. The idea is to have it in a venue like this, to make it truly interactive and to hear from people we might not have thought about hearing from. So that's kind of the first thing. And I know we're going to welcome your feedback on the whole event, but that's one thing, is how we organise this event and whether you like this particular format. Now the agenda, if I go, there we go. I'm not going to do more than just put that up there and focus your minds on it, but particularly to emphasise this element down here in the middle where we want to make it interactive. And exactly as I said there, this is actually about giving you a few headline areas we want to talk about, but it's to hear your views. It is that opportunity for MCS to really hear what is important to you at the moment. Future MCS, and I think that's where Ian and the team are going to spend a lot of time talking about what that is going forward. I guess when we novated in April 2018, one of the things we said right at the start is this is now the new MCS. And I hope that when you hear the detail of what we have gone through, and that you'll actually feel that yes, we have made a significant change since that period of time. And I think that's one of the bits we want to reflect on, is hearing whether you think we've focused on the priorities that make a difference to you. But there's more changes to come, and in particular, we want to be seen working with you to be kind of leaders in the industry and not policing the industry. So it's that element of how do we take the industry forward. On top of that, there will be that compliance and enforcement element that you've talked about, because that actually is, as you've told us, that actually helps the industry as much as it helps the consumer. So it's that combination of how do we make those two work together. It's also an element where we will be focusing very much around protecting the consumer, because actually giving that confidence in homegrown energy is what really is going to provide that real thrust in terms of making sure this is at the heart of all the whole house approaches and getting to that zero carbon target. And we're at that sort of part way through that transition, I guess, from being something which was very much about a route to financial incentives to being something which is relevant to all parts. Whenever renewables are installed less than 50 kilowatts, that MCS should be very much at the forefront of what we should be thinking about. And in fact, one of the things that we'd like you to do over the next 18 months to 2 years is to kind of put us to test a bit, because one of the areas where we know at the moment we don't have the impact we want to have is in the new build sector. So to be relevant to renewables throughout the industry, that is an area clearly where we need to play a role as well. So that's our chance to kind of sort of put out now, hold us to account over the coming years to make sure that we are relevant just as much to new build sector as to retrofit. I don't want to take up any really much more time on that. So with that short introduction, I want to introduce you to, hand on to Ian, in Ian's capable hands. And in fact, what I would like to say is that kind of Ian and the team that he's building up is one of the reasons why us as the MCS board are really comfortable to make statements like hold us to account for things we want to do in the future. Because that team is actually building and really delivering. I mean, the amount he's done in the period that he's taken office and built that team, I think is a fantastic credit to him and that whole team. And really it's therefore gives us confidence to be able to make statements like hold us to account for those changes in the future. So with that short introduction, I'll hand over to Ian.
Thank you. Oh, it's that one. Thank you. So this is a good opportunity for me to say a personal thank you to all of you on behalf of myself and the new MCS team. And I think your encouragement, engagement, yes, even yours, has been fantastic this last 18 months. So in terms of acting as our critical friends, we've needed that, and that's spurred us on, and I think that's helped us deliver on the progress we've made so far. So I guess the big picture, as we look at it, is the government announcement in June 2019, affirming its commitment to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. I know most of us would like that to be sooner, but it's a really important step. And domestic energy, of course, will play a critical role in achieving this target. And that's why we've set ourselves a really ambitious target and a goal for MCS going forward. So our vision is to see MCS certified products and installations in every UK home, and as Tim said, not just retrofit but also new build as well. So achieving this goal will not be easy, but we firmly believe that the two factors that will be central to that future success will be quality and confidence, and I mean consumer confidence. And over the last 18 months, MCS has been repositioning itself, and you've probably noticed that, I hope you've noticed that, to ensure that we're able to offer the quality assurance this sector needs with the associated consumer confidence. What we aim to do is join the dots between a thriving industry sector in a post-government incentive world operating at the highest quality standards with consumers who need to be confident in their homegrown energy. Homegrown. We chose those words carefully because something homegrown is something that matters to people personally, something we can all take pride in. And that's exactly the feeling that we want to create across the UK and to help more and more people embrace a homegrown energy future. It's an exciting prospect, and I know many of you in this room, all of you in this room, are committed to making that a positive reality. So a new MCS is emerging. And as you will have seen from the opening video sequence, which we might play again at the end if you didn't see it, there has been a great deal that has been achieved over this last 18 months. And with the majority of those initiatives were in a direct response to the feedback we receive from you on a daily basis, but also at previous stakeholder advisory groups. So as I consider the year ahead, I'd like to highlight a few of these changes, which in themselves may not appear that significant if taken in isolation, but which do give us the new ways of working for MCS and the momentum we need to deliver on our ambition going forward. A committed team. We have effected a significant change to our operational delivery this last year, including a move to the northwest. The MCS help desk now has a northern accent. Thank you. Probably a Scouse accent, even more importantly. And I'm confident I have the team and the support, including from the MCS board, to deliver on the next phase of a new MCS. The rebranding has been a great success. Yes, there are still a few who remain to be convinced, but linked to a new vision and mission for MCS, for the scheme, we are now more relevant, I think, and more present in this market through our social media channels and initiatives like the sponsorship of the popular podcasts, which I experienced earlier today, where engineers share their expertise in the field of renewables. And when I look back over the year, I'm especially proud of the partnership that we're forming with the Renewable Energy Consumer Code with REC. The aim of that is to place consumer protection at the heart of homegrown energy, and to be honest, that has always been a cornerstone of what MCS is about. But as you may have heard me say before, there are many working parts to MCS, through which a minority, but they're still there, of poor installers and their consumers can sometimes fall through the gaps. We expect that the current MCS REC pilot to solar PV installers will extend to all installers next year. There's still more to do, but our working relationships with colleagues at Bayes and Ofgem have also improved this last year. Thank you, Matthew, for being with us. And it's great to have those colleagues with us, as I say. We do now have a more stable MID, the MCS installation database, that allows, for example, energy providers to automatically and securely check the presence of an MCS certificate at a domestic property when they're processing a consumer's application for an export tariff under the Smart Export Guarantee. So the new MID is an enabler for some of the more advanced initiatives we've got planned for the year ahead, and we'll be sharing some of those with you over the course of the year. So on the back of a modernised MID, we've started to extract and data mine the intelligence that exists in 12 years of MCS data. Some of the early results are shown here, and we've got some fancy charts, and I know you can't see that at the back, but as our stakeholders, we want to give you access to the data that you've helped generate. So over the course of this year, we'll be working on this. My team will be working on this in terms of really understanding what's been happening over time so that we understand what's been installed alongside what, where it's been installed, who installed it. And then with the addition of census data, we're going to start to understand who. What do renewable energy adopters look like? But if change is important, a shift in the scheme's approach has also been the aim this last 18 months, and the culture of a new MCS has been born. So many of you have provided encouragement, positive feedback about your perception of MCS and its change. There is now expectation of good things to come. And as a scheme, we know more than ever that we're open to partnerships and collaboration. So we'll work with you, our stakeholders. Ultimately, we all want the same thing, and MCS is ready to be the sector's quality assurance partner. I joke that MCS is a 12-year-old startup, and as a team, we think like that. And so now let's turn to our future ambition. And I'll use this, that helps. As we move forward, standards remain at the heart of what MCS is and what we do. We're a standards organisation, but we've now got a broader ambition in that we believe our standards should apply to all low-carbon energy technology installations, including to the new build sector, and not just to retrofit installations. But if raising standards of workmanship is a first principle, we will work this year to simplify the management of our standards and the standards themselves, increasing their accessibility. Through initiatives we refer to as future compliance, we will look to bring standards into the field through tools and guidance that is readily accessible to installers and their businesses wherever they happen to be working. MCS in the future should be seen as a resource to draw on to support the installer to be the best they can be. And so for the installer, MCS certification in a post-government incentive world will represent their mark of quality and act as a point of differentiation that supports the development of their business. We've recently launched an installer oversight committee, and I can see some of its members in the room, which can guide us towards the changes that we know we need to make to the scheme. We see MCS at the very beginning of a new to the sector installer's journey. Following the quality first principle to best avoid quality issues in the future, we're now working on an initiative we call Future Skills. This will take forward some of the work that the MCS Charitable Foundation has funded into training development, And we want to deliver a standardised heat pump training programme for the sector with our partners. So initially targeted at existing plumbers and delivered through multiple training providers, we hope to support the much publicised issues around capacity in the market to take forward some of the government's policies. I believe that when we look back on 2020, we'll see it as the moment at which heat pump installation gained more mass market appeal. Everyone we speak to is telling us that inquiries are up. If you consider that solar PV installations registered with MCS are now back to levels recorded in 2018 and taking out the 2019 leap because of the end of the feed-in tariff. If you look back, heat pumps have represented around 8.5% of those installations that have been registered with MCS. In the first 2 months of this year, we're up closer to 30%. But we need to learn the lessons of what the Solar Trade Association call the solar coaster. We need to protect the integrity of the sector at a time of this significant growth. And so our aim this year is to cement an ambition to be the sector's quality assurance partner. We want trade associations to see us as their obvious partner for ensuring the best practice is understood and shared, whether it be through technical guidance, through training, through CPD, through case studies on their members, and for manufacturers to see us as a natural extension to their quality assurance departments as well. This year we will also embrace umbrella schemes where in the past we may have been cautious as to their merits. Over the coming year we will also undertake a review of the certification scheme that assesses compliance to MCS standards. There are pros and cons of having different models, but we now need to consider what quality assurance we need for the new market reality. But I'm clear that MCS will need to capture and share best practice, provide guidance and support, be responsive to issues in the market, and better connect technical compliance with consumer protection, when these have in the past, I'm afraid to say, been seen as separate things. With our new brand identity firmly in place, we aim to support and guide a next wave of customers. These consumers are different to those that have gone before, and if you consider the standard market adoption curve, we're moving beyond the first phase of technology adoption that has engaged the innovators, the believers, the enthusiasts, the visionaries. We're now moving into a time of the early majority, and these are pragmatists. And as pragmatists, they're looking to be guided more by practical considerations than by ideals. They need to be convinced as to the merits of each technology and be reassured that if something were to go wrong, there are mechanisms to help put things right. So enough from me then. I can't wait to hear the views of our panel. That's what it says here. So thank you for listening again, and thank you for all your support over the last 18 months.
Okay, so we'll hand over to the panel. What we've asked the panel to do is to share 5 minutes. That's 5 minutes on their specialist subjects. So I'm going to take no more time. I'm going to hand over. And Bean, should we start with you?
Well, thank you very much indeed. 5 minutes on heat pumps. Oh my God, I can just about get the word out in 5 minutes. First of all, I want to thank MCS for inviting our industry to take part in this, because I think it's really, really important. We have enjoyed I think a really deepening relationship with MCS since Novation. You know, Novation was a long time coming. It was,
very hard and very difficult, but I think the results that we've seen, and certainly the results that our industry have seen, I think have been tremendous. So we're very pleased with the outcome of that. And I guess we've got to pick up on a couple of things that Ian was talking about. And for me, the two big, this is a seminal year. This could be a seminal year for the heat pump industry. He says, looking at the man from the ministry. It could be a seminal year. We have a real opportunity where the growth in consumer demand for something to be done about climate change is tremendous. And we have a technology that's ready to go. What we've got to do as an industry is convince first the ministry and then the political paymasters that actually we do have an offering that they can now start to get behind. And I think that the collaboration that we're seeing between our organisation, predominantly installers, the Heat Pump Association, predominantly manufacturers, MCS, and all of the other interested parties. So on the delivery side, the various organisations that represent the existing installer body, the fossil fuel installer body, all of that is critical to us demonstrating to the ministry and to the politicians that we have an industry that's ready to go. The Heat Pump Association published a fantastic document at the end of last year, their roadmap for the heat pump sector for the UK. Lots of material in there that demonstrates that the supply chain is capable and that we're capable of training the number of installers. And we're going to repurpose the existing workforce. It's exactly what's happening in the electric vehicle market at the moment. You know, the guys fixing your cars, they're not sacking all their old engineers and bringing on a whole lot of new people. They're repurposing what they've got already. And we are looking to do exactly the same with a really strong training program. And the other point that I want to pick up is the consumer issue. Ian concentrated a lot on the consumer. We have also recognised that the consumer is key here. And one of the things that I would like to see us developing, and which we will be developing through our new platform, is strong consumer advisory, a strong consumer advisory piece. The consumer needs help here. You know, this is new technology. They need some guidance. They need some help. And it is really important that the industry steps up and starts to provide that. So we'll be looking to provide advice for not only domestic consumers from an MCS perspective, but also on the commercial side, particularly those doing social housing and what have you. How am I doing for time? I'm all right. Oh, thank goodness for that. Social housing providers, because in my day job, when I have time, quite a lot of the heat pump systems that I see that aren't going that well, and there are some, most of them should never have been procured in the first place. So we really need to work with the consumer. And I believe that actually we can reach out, and I've had some really interesting discussions just today with housing associations, community energy groups, who are saying, oh, thank God for that. Someone actually wants to help us. And I think that struck a chord with the ministry. And it certainly struck a chord with some of the very big players in our sector. Some of the big utility companies are saying, actually, we see this as really good. If we can uplift the quality of what people are buying because they've been educated and they have confidence in what they're buying, it will lift the quality of what we're delivering. And at the end of the day, market growth for us will be built on happy consumers. We are not going to build growth in our sector if we cannot make the outcomes for the consumers as good as they possibly can be. We need to achieve what they've achieved in Sweden in the last 70 years, 95% of installations being fantastic straight out the box, but we've only got 5 to 10 years to do it. So it's a huge and steep climb for us, but I think the industry is absolutely up for it. My members are up for it. I know the HPA is up for it. And I think we've won the argument in the ministry from a carbon perspective. I've no idea yet whether the government is going to be with us. Absolutely no idea. I don't know which Boris is going to turn up. So we want to know, are they going to actually start delivering policies that allow us to invest in this sector? We want something that gives signals that says that the installers can invest in training, because even if we give them a nice voucher scheme, they will still be giving up their time to train, and we want to make sure the supply chain has a ready market that they can see to allow them to invest in what we're doing. So there we go. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. There'll be time for questions when we're finished, the four. Chris, can I hand over to you?
Actually, I don't need that. Thank you. I'll speak from here. So I joined the Solar Trade Association in 2017. So Ian talks about the Solar Coaster. I kind of joined right at the end, which it's just sort of a tail out at the bottom, I think. And it's, to me, if you look at decades of the industry, again, Ian talked about net zero target for 2050. For me, 2020 to 2030 is the vital decade, and we are in a position where we can deliver an awful lot as a renewables industry. I think solar and energy storage will play a massive part of that. So the industry's gone through its transition. We've ridden the solar coaster. We've grown. We've delivered 1 million solar roofs across the country, backed by government subsidy. That was required to deliver an industry and the skills which are out there now in the market. We're now coming out of that phase, and we're in a phase where we're building new business models. There's the expertise in the industry is much richer than it was, say, sort of 5-10 years ago. And we're now at a stage where we can grow sustainably in the economic sense of the word. That's the way I see the industry, both in terms of the large-scale market all the way down to the domestic residential market. And so we're building a new narrative. The narrative is about an integration of technologies. So PV works with energy storage. We represent manufacturers of batteries, and installers are always looking at options for storage. That's now just part of the industry as far as we're concerned. There'll be flexible tariffs, there'll be heat pumps in the market, there'll be EV charging. It's how all of these things, these different technologies and the capabilities which are growing massively, how they integrate together, what they can deliver will be very powerful. Costs across the board are falling, and they will continue to fall. PV the costs of those for domestic consumers have fallen a tremendous amount over the last 10 years. As I say, I think the industry that's if you like, that's grown up, and the industry that is left, those who did not come in for a quick buck and go out of business off the back of some subsidies, those players have largely gone from the market. The people who are there now, some of you in the audience, really know what you're doing. So there's an expertise in the market which is not just in the solar industry. I come across people who are working in the electricity supply industry or in storage companies. All started in solar, so in a sense, there's a diaspora of skills and expertise out there in the market. That's part of the narrative now. Another part of the narrative, which really has come up this year, is the rise in public awareness around climate change and the desire to do something about it. So I think we will see, and we are seeing from our installers, more people installing solar and storage because they want to do their bit, because they see they want to contribute to this transition. And I think EVs is a massive part of that. So the concept of being able to fill your own car up with your own electricity for free is a very, very powerful concept. And I think that will help to drive solar energy storage and EV charging into the domestic market. And the other, again, Ian mentioned new build. I think we're on the cusp of seeing solar particularly seeing as now mainstreamed into the new build market. Most major house builders will have installed solar in some of their new build now. In Scotland, because the standards are such, nearly all of new build homes in Scotland are requiring solar now. That's in Scotland. So when we get the standards set right in England and Wales, we'll see a growth there as well. In terms of what we're doing as an association, we are helping to create those markets. So as well as doing all the work lobbying the likes of Matthew around some of the policy barriers, we're trying to drive those markets. So, for example, we've produced a lot of evidence which is around how to increase the building standards, both at a national level but also at a local level. 50%, according to our research, 50% of local authorities require building standards higher than the national average. So there's actually quite a lot which local authorities have been doing over the last few years. We'll be publishing more research on the sort of the benefits of smart homes for the electricity system, again looking at the advantages of peak shaving and what you can do if you're exporting some of your own power into the grid. We'll be harrying and chasing electricity supply industry to offer that fair price for exported solar, and I have 1 minute left, so I'll speak much more quickly. There's a league table on our website which looks at the smart energy tariffs and who's offering you the best. In terms of the MCS, I'll finish on my minute on why we're here, the value I think we have the MCS. STA has always been a champion for standards and best practice in this country for the solar industry. We are now very pleased to be holding a sort of partnership with the MCS. If you're a small installer, we've cut your membership rates for the STA by £100. And MCS will offer any STA member 5 free credits. That's £150 off your off your annual bill, if you like. If you're a new installer, not member of the STA, you'll get 10 credits. So that's £300 off in the first year. So we really want to sort of encourage and push people, if you like, to become part of the MCS family. We're developing a rooftop operations and maintenance sort of best practice, which we would like to see MCS a requirement, if you like, for maintaining existing solar. That's something which I think is very, very important. All those systems which are out there which are starting to decline. So that's something we're working with as well. And we've also already worked with the MCS in terms of developing the battery standard. We're testing it, we're piloting with some of our members. So this is where we're very keen to work. And I think, again, to add my congratulations to Ian, I think Ian's done a tremendous job since he's been there. I think we've seen improvement in enforcement, improvement in reduction of costs for the industry, and improvement in terms of streamlining the standards is what's coming next. I'd urge you to also look at that auditing process. I think that's the next thing, absolutely. So thanks for all your work, Ian, and glad to be here.
Okay, Katrin, are you ready?
Thank you. Oh, right. I've got slides, so I'm going to use them. Great. It's a bit over the top. We've all got our own styles, haven't we? I'm always really pleased to be asked to speak about energy advice, because I think it tends to be the forgotten sector. It's the soft skills. And I've been involved in energy advice since the mid-1980s, when I helped to set up an energy advice service for tenant organisations in London. And in those days, we were most concerned, I would say, about fuel debt, people being disconnected from the supply as a result, problems of being too cold at home and the health problems that are associated with that, dampness from condensation. Unfortunately, all of those things still apply, but we now have the added huge concern about galloping climate change and carbon emissions. So if anything, it's got more demanding, not less. So I won't talk too much about history. I want to talk about what do people need to know now. Why do people need energy advice now? Well, they need to know what measures to invest in their own homes. They need to know when and in what order. And if we're looking at 2050 targets, people have got a long road to go with existing homes particularly. One of the big issues is that not everyone can do everything at once. Obviously, the ideal is a whole house renovation at the same time. For most people, in real life means incremental changes because they've got to live in the homes, limited money, etc. So that's a real challenge. What order do you do things in, and how do you do it in such a way that you're not creating a lock-in, making it more difficult to go further in the future? Obviously, the costs is a big part of that. What does it cost you? Being able to actually know what the impact is in terms of carbon emissions, how much savings you might have, comfort, convenience, etc., and comparison to benchmarks and standards, so not just an energy performance certificate or a carbon emission standard, but also how does my house compare to other people like me, other houses like me? So benchmarks can mean a whole load of different things, to be comparing with your neighbours, for example. Cost of works and finance, well, actually, if you're giving energy advice, you end up spending a lot of time helping people with finding finance and actually filling out applications for loans and grants and things like that, or if they're on low incomes, finding the grants that are available. It becomes a huge issue. Tariffs and supplier choice, and then finally behaviour, whether it's making the best use of what you've got or whether it's how to adjust to new technologies that you're not familiar with, but also wider lifestyle tips on sustainability. Energy advice tools and techniques, how is it done in practice? About 13 years ago, I did a survey of the way energy advice is given across Europe, which was huge fun, and we collated the different tools and techniques. My favourite one of all, I think, was there was a Spanish soap opera, which is 15-minute episodes every day, a bit like The Archers, only it was on TV. I think it was called something like Turn Off the Light. And they managed to weave in energy efficiency messages to the dramatic storyline. And they had millions and millions of viewers. I don't remember the exact figure now, but it was a lot. So people, the range of tools and techniques that people have is massive. And on a serious note, the difference between giving out a leaflet at a once a year energy awareness day, and in-depth technical advice or helping people through a whole project is huge. So the depth of advice is a big issue. And just very roughly, this is a hierarchy from the most shallow to the most deep, perhaps, types of advice, going from online information. Interactive tools is a bit more in-depth than just information, generic. Call centres, drop-in surgeries, stands in public places and events, home visit, where actually face-to-face, generally people who give advice think that face-to-face has more impact, where you can actually talk about people's real problems. Home surveys and assessments where you can quantify things. One of the important points to make here, though, is advice needs are multi-stage. People need support through the whole retrofit journey. It's not a one-off thing. And perhaps the ideal is what we call a one-stop shop. Can't say that. One-stop shop, where people can get that support all the way through. And that takes something to think about. Big issues, relevance. Is it specific to your home, not just generic? Clarity and practicality. Advisor expertise, technical, financial, and social. Trust. This is the difficult thing. How do you pay for advice while making it commercially independent? And the big issue there is that you're looking at holistic advice and not just one technology. When you're looking at achieving zero carbon, you need to look at the whole thing. And broadly speaking, the fabric first principle. And usability and reliability of assessments. And we won't go into that right now because it's a huge question. Energy performance certificates and how good is the energy assessment. So challenges now and in the future, well, achieving the big shift to net zero. How do we get deep retrofit as well as incremental? That's got to be the biggest challenge. One of the big things that we're likely to see, and they're looking at this in Scotland at the moment, even for owner-occupied homes, is setting minimum energy efficiency standards for homes, with triggers like point of sale, point of rental, but perhaps also major renovation, and perhaps even small incremental bits of renovation work, repair, maintenance, home improvement work. Now that means that the advice you get through assessment starts to have a legal status. That's a whole new ballgame, isn't it? And so actually the accuracy and relevance of that becomes incredibly important. And then obviously being able to link in with heat networks and community energy schemes. So although you're looking at the individual building, you need to be aware of these broader things that are going on in your community. And the point I want to make there is effective energy advice oils the wheels of the energy transition. I thought about advice as being glue as well, but I think that sounds a bit sticky. I think oil's a bit better, although it is fossil fuel, so I haven't quite got that right. And I don't know what he's going to do with the cartoon about that. Sorry, I shouldn't have said oil, should I? Probably sunflower oil, olive oil, yeah. I think that's it. I think that was all I was going to say. Yep. So really, the point, just to quickly wind up on that, I think we need to really think about the long-term future with advice and see it as a very long-term issue. And there's an interesting idea about a building renovation passport that's being talked about, which could be a logbook for how you give advice as well over an incremental period for your building. So just finish off with a few thoughts, new tools and techniques. Thank you.
Katrin, thank you. Matthew.
Well, I did have some slides, but I think I'm going to completely ignore them and ad lib, so this could be dangerous. So to put this in some context, so homes are responsible for about 14% of our emissions. We now have a very engaged set of ministers who understand that particular challenge. And I think they understand that from where we are now, we have a long way to go to meeting our carbon budget targets, to meeting net zero. So just to give some context, today about 60% of homes have smart meters, about 200,000 homes have low carbon heating, about 500,000 homes have solid wall insulation. But if we want to meet our carbon budget, so carbon budget 5 from 2028 to 2032, we'll have to improve the energy efficiency of 15 million homes. We will have to decarbonize heat in 4 million homes. So we have an enormous challenge over the next decade. To get to net zero, we have to go even further. So obviously we will need to deliver about 20 million improvements to homes up and down the country in terms of energy efficiency. That includes 6 million solid walls that will have to be installed. And we'll have to do something about low carbon heating. Almost all homes will have to be decarbonised. So that's 25 million homes. So we, as a department, are facing some particular challenges in trying to overcome these particular barriers to deploying low carbon technologies. But as I said, fortunately, we've got very engaged ministers, which perhaps we haven't always had, but certainly now we've got a strong commitment to net zero. And that's actually changed and shifted the way we think about delivering our policies. And there is certainly a lot more ambition in the department and in Treasury, which is really important to us. And I think they also understand the importance of building a skilled and highly efficient workforce to actually deliver this as well. So we're doing a lot of work on installer skills, working with Ian and others on trying to improve the proposition, for consumers, but also for installers. So we're working with the likes of Department for Education to improve access to apprenticeships, and we're working on the T-levels, the new T-levels, to provide technical competencies equivalent to A-levels. We're also undertaking a large amount of research to try and understand how we prepare the supply chain for this. So the CITB are doing a big piece of work at the moment looking at the transition to net zero and how we actually build up the supply chain. And we're looking to skill up and support retraining of installers. So building on what Bean said around not just looking at new entrants to the market, but also looking at building up the supply chain, retraining existing fossil fuel installers and others. And I think that's the key message to that is as we ramp up our activities in this area, and we estimate that we might need 10,000 new heating installers, low carbon heating installers over the next 5 years. The key to that is ensuring that quality is maintained and we don't have a gold rush or we don't have a cowboy installers, as is sometimes said, and we actually deliver high quality installations. But I'll leave you with this last thought. So one statistic I came across recently was 69% of installers are rarely or never asked about low carbon heating or renewable energy. 69%. So we have to build up the supply chain, we have to build confidence in the supply chain, but we also have to allow installers to become enablers for the technology.
Thank you. So that leaves us open for a conversation, and it's gone a little bit quieter out and about, which is useful. So we have about 15 to 20 minutes to explore. I have a question to ask, which is, so when you think about the domestic renewable market today, from your perspective, what's it like? What's it like out there? So we have some roving mics. Probably easiest if you throw your hand up if you and just want to try and shout out some thoughts. Ian's going to try and capture those as we go. So what's it like?
I'm going to put on a completely different hat, not as chair as MCS, but as part of the Cosy Homes Oxfordshire programme, which is all about trying to do the whole house approach and get down to kind of the zero carbon levels. We've got 200 customers that are engaged with the whole house approach that want to have this done, where, for example, heat pumps and PV are all part of it. The biggest challenge we've now got is exactly what we're just talking about, is making sure the supply chain actually work together. And I think that is one of the challenges, is joining up the dots. So it's making sure that heat pumps work with external wall insulation, work with PV, how you then do the smart part of it to integrate. And I think that actually is a challenge maybe that is really out there, and I can't see too many people that are in the field addressing that, and it's kind of how do we do that. And joining up the dots also, you mentioned, for example, 60% have smart meters out there, but actually how many of those homes is that smart information being used by the consumer to drive down emissions? If it's 1%, I'll buy you several pints. I think it's less than 1% that are actually being used. So it's making sure that those dots are joined up. So that for me is the reality out there, is how we join them up.
So at the moment, it's sort of like, it's not very joined up. What else is it like? So what else is it like out at the moment?
I would say there's a degree of hesitancy
Okay.
from the installer sector.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is we talk about repurposing and retraining, and we're absolutely right to talk about that. The demand that we expect in the future would require that.
Yeah.
The problem is the trust of the installers that demand is real.
Right.
So, within my own organisation, about 6% of the installers we certify are engaged with the renewable sector.
Right.
They've heard it before. We've had Green Deal, we've had feed-in tariff, we've had renewable heat incentives. Some of them have engaged and then disengaged. So one of the issues we face is, how do we make them believe it's happening this time? Is this government really going to follow through with the initiatives and the support, et cetera, and it not fall apart in 3, 4, 5 years' time? So when you've had your fingers burnt by going through training programs and getting accredited, you've got to be really convinced to go back into that.
Okay.
The other thing that people will say, that if I think about the 94% who are not engaged, they're busy. Yeah, so it's not like they're looking for the work. They're busy enough fitting EV charge points in the electrical sector and fitting fossil fuel in the heating sector. So we've got to somehow convince them that they can be busy but also take the future steps as well.
With you. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Useful. Just a final check-in. Same or different? Thinking about what it's like at the moment.
Yeah, Alex here from ASON Group. We're battery storage energy providers. I think a lot of people in our market and installers is they're unsure of the technology that's being put in front of them. What I mean by that is all the battery energy storage manufacturers are marketing their products in such a way to really confuse the end consumer. So it's that standardization of whether it's data sheets or information and understanding, so they can look at one product and say, I can compare it apples for apples, and then choose which products they want once they have that.
So a little bit of demystifying and standardizing, so that like is like. Final, just check in on that question. Same or different? What's it like for you? Okay, so, there we go, sorry. It's all this side. Come on this side.
Hi.
Don't worry, it's not a competition.
Paul Leedham, Matrix Energy.
Paul.
We're very, very busy at the moment. I think Andy will testify to that as well. Our fear, in some respects, I suppose, is as we approach March next year, we don't want to see the drop off the end of a cliff, just like we did with solar PV. And in some respects, no disrespect to the electrical industry, the heat pump industry, it's a lot more involved, there's a lot more expertise involved, and we don't want to see that go to waste. So it'd be nice to see something, whether it's a boiler scrappage scheme or whatever you're going to think of, or whether we get input into that. We'd like to see something and some confidence that the industry is going to continue and not just drop and then have to come back.
So it's like a bridge in a way, sort of into the future, or
Golden Bridge.
Golden Bridge. Okay, thank you. Final check-in.
Sharon Louth, ground firm. I find that there's a lot of negative press on the internet, and there's not enough positive feedback. It wouldn't be too bad if we could do a campaign to make it more customer awareness through the media instead of all the negativity.
So a little bit of campaigning to support the confidence of consumers and making that decision and that move. Same or different?
Just building on the point about installers, working in the heating sector for many years, it would be fair to say that installers will install what consumers ask for.
Yes.
They will diversify, but if they're not asked to diversify, they'll install exactly what consumers. So I suppose a question for Matthew, if he's able to answer, is what can government do to make consumers switch? What incentives are there? Why should they? And if you can crack that one, you'll crack the installer one.
Yeah. Okay. So again, installers and the market being driven by consumer demand and perceived need or want. Let me broaden the question, or actually narrow the question. So I'd like us to think just for a minute about MCS, and what's that like today for you? What is MCS like? We want to try and capture that. I'm going to move the question forward into the future in a minute, but just for now, what's MCS like today? Oh, sorry,
It's behind you.
I haven't got the eyes on.
It's behind you. I would say that the top end of MCS is more accessible today than it's ever been. It's absolutely transformed in that respect. You know, you can actually reach the top end, right at the top of MCS, have a conversation, and get a return on that conversation that gives you some confidence that your message is being heard. And that is entirely new. And that's down to the new board and the new management of the service company. It's transformed beyond all recognition.
Same or different? Same or different? Oh,
Yeah, I'd just like to reinforce what Bean has just stated. It's extremely refreshing within the heating sector to see that. We don't often see it, and so I'd like to reinforce that because it's very, very new, and all the people I speak to are really encouraged by that. So that's a good thing.
So it's accessible? Same or different? What else is it like? Oh, there you go.
It's sad to say it's probably the same in terms of consumer.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, mainly because I can't see any consumers out there that no one knows the MCS brand.
Yeah.
So how can you get that consumer confidence from a brand which is invisible? So I still can't see the value to consumer and then for the installer in that sense.
Okay, that's good. Same or different? Same or different? Same or different? Last call. I like to give chance just for, sort of sometimes, final hit. So I'm going to move on. And when we think about the future, so listen, the challenge with us as human beings, so we're actually, although we learned how to do this because we're actually into behavior change, so it's really interesting listening to you all talk about consumer change, and a lot of our experience, interesting, has been in health and helping people stop smoking, lose weight, and various other things that are equally as challenging as getting people to move to energy, to different energy forms. However, when we talk about the future, we often start going, can't do this because. So when inside your heads you go, can't do this because, what I'd like you to do is just sort of ask that to just sit back for a minute and just sort of shoot for the moon thing. Just let's think about when this market is like really good, when this domestic renewable market is at its best, when it's giving you everything you want, what's it like? What's it like? What will it be like? It's coming over, sorry.
Yes, it's Paul Harmer, CIPHE.
Hi.
We need to create this level playing field.
Okay.
So the big word is standardisation, and what you need to do to design and install a heat pump correctly to make it efficient, we need that across all heat generators. So that can be enforced by training and supporting the installer. But we need to see a level playing field. So system balancing on every system.
Okay.
Design correctly, a heat loss done at the start. So yeah, I'm going to use that big word, standardisation.
So standardisation, but actually the metaphor is a level playing field. So at its best, you've got a level playing field. What else is it like at its best?
Graham Hazel, Heat Pump Association. I'd like to pick up on Sharon's point. There's a lot of negativity, but when you speak to consumers who have a system, they've upgraded, they're getting potentially lower energy bills, they know what they're doing is fantastic to the environment, that's a huge kick. You know, you speak to these people and they are greatest advocates. Yeah. I've an installation, a friend that's got one, a ground source. He can't understand why all his neighbours haven't got it. He has dinner parties where he tells them, you should have a ground source system. He doesn't invite me, just in case. But you know, that's what we need to be leveraging on. Is that really? And it's fantastic. You speak to people; they are happy. They know they're warm. Yeah. They're saving the planet, and they're potentially saving some money.
Yeah. So, at its best, people are really like sort of telling the story. Why aren't you? Yeah, sort of, and just really enjoying the fact that they're, as you say, they're warm. They're helping make a difference to the planet, and they're saving themselves some money along the way. Brilliant. What else is it like? What else is it like?
Stuart, I'll have a stab. If there's,
thank you.
Just the vision I think I've got for the homegrown energy market is that this ultimately should be seen as just another home improvement, something which is good for your house, and ideally as something which is enhancing the value of that property. So I think that's one of the things which we're going to focus on is just getting a sense of if there is solar on the roof, or it's a heat pump, or it's very well insulated, that has a value in the market, and your estate agent should be saying, why is there no solar on this roof? That's not going to be as much value as the house down the road. So I think those are the sort of things. Not only will then it gets that sort of attraction to that sort of aspirational sense in what you're doing to the property, but also I think the tipping point will be when we get the mortgage market starting to value that as well, and we're starting to see the tiptoe of some of the mortgage providers looking to create green mortgages, perhaps favourable interest rates if you've got a slightly better EPC on your home. I think when that is out there in the sort of the existing home market, that could be a real tipping point. So that's what I want to see it turn into.
Brilliant. Coming over. You're doing very well, thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to take a slightly sideways step
Please.
to Matthew, actually, because one of the things you're saying is you want, we want people to say what a good thing it is. At the moment, this isn't from homeowners, this is from commercial properties, where the big complaint is that basically because they've installed solar PV, their business rates have actually gone up. The revaluation of the business rates has gone up massively. Interestingly, I got an email today. I was nagged by somebody about it yesterday. I got an email today about apparently Aldi, which has found that by putting the solar panels on their roofs, their business rates have gone up massively. That is not encouraging the commercial sector to actually use renewable energy. So that's a sideways thing to you, Matthew, for government policy.
So at its best, it's consistent and supportive. Cool, fantastic. I'm going to, just as we draw, we've got a few minutes. We are for a few minutes? Got a few minutes. I would like to then extend the question into, so when you think about MCS, and it's at its best, or they are at their best, what are they like? What are they like for you? What are you experiencing? What are you noticing? Go on, we'll share mics.
Well, what's really refreshing for me, because I come from sort of the education background within the heating plumbing industry, is that they're listening to how we should actually now train. So I'm going to throw a curveball out here. The way we train in the heating and plumbing industry is not fit for purpose. I think we need a paradigm shift completely. We currently train to be qualified, which is completely different to training to be competent. So if we look at other sectors, the NHS, and there's some other sectors, they're now actually looking at adult learning theory, andragogy, pedagogy, adult learning theories, to understand how actually people learn. Because at the moment, we tend to go into a, training room. We have a very, very clever, intelligent person talking about the technology, and then we all leave. We might do an assessment, then we all leave. Well, most people naturally forget. A great psychologist back in the 1800s called it the forgetting curve at Ebbinghaus. So you are now getting other sectors looking to actually how humans, and you mentioned about behavioural change, and I think we really need to see how we actually now train these people. CPD, I mean, to me, CPD is continuous, and the D stands for developmental. So when you go into somewhere and you do a CPD course, you should actually know where each individual learner is after they've done that training, and then develop them. Currently, we go in, you get your CPD certificate, and that's it. No one knows where they got to. You need to know where someone is, where they've got to, and then you can develop them individually. And as all educationalists or top educationalists around the world will tell you, peer learning is the biggest influence on how we learn, not from lecturers like me.
Yes, I have a daughter who's a doctor, and it's learn one, do one, teach one. Same or different. I was sort of thinking, what is that model? And it's like personalization, isn't it, as well? It's about making that training and development really personalized and relevant to their journey, to where they are as professional people. Same or different? What's MCS like when it's at its best, when they're at their best? What are you noticing?
Yeah, we're pretty new to the scene. I think they're probably the most engaging body that I've ever met with the changes that we're trying to face. And obviously we're pushing for energy storage training college. Emailing Ian on a Saturday saying, can you please respond? Because we're seeing the market in front of us. And I think having that engagement, I think you made the point earlier, that what a refreshing new team that Ian's building, that you do get an email on a Saturday, because I'm badgering him every bloody week saying, I want this energy training college in April, not next April, in April, because we need it, you know, the emerging market, but we need the people to deliver it. Yeah. So that's engagement.
Engagement. So really, at its best, it's highly engaging. And is it being a bit proactive as well as reactive, or? Yeah. Yeah. Same or different? Last couple of minutes. Oh.
There's a hand. Okay, Andrew Louth from Grantham. Actually, it was 21 years this month I fitted my first ever ground source heat pump, and the industry has taken a lot of changes, but the difference. So for a new guy coming into the industry, until the changes are made, MCS can be onerous as a sole trader. Paper riffs, streamlining that. Been a lot of conversation with Ian regarding that to be able to bring down this. So at this moment, if he was coming in, it might be slightly onerous. But as your changes start to come about, that might be a bit more light-footed, shall we say. Yeah, because I mean, the academic value of what's been put in is a little bit too much. Writing and having paperwork for your general plumber that wants to become an installer could be a slight little mountain. When he gets home at night, he might work longer than he wants to. So why would he want to fit an heat pump when he can fit a boiler? And there's been an industry that makes it slick. So I think Ian's working towards that slickness, as of many discussions we've had. And but at this moment in time, it's good to see that it's taking, shall we say, there's light at the end of the tunnel. As in before, MCS was unapproachable. Somebody like mushrooms growing in the dark room in the back room. But other than that, yeah. So from an installer perspective, yeah, hopefully there is a change in the industry. And, okay.
I think Steve Jobs put it as something like beautifully designed, easy to use, simple to navigate, or something like. So that sounds like at its best, and it sounds like you're on a journey. So there's definitely same or different. Final couple of opportunities.
I'd like to say that I definitely see the curve for improvement.
Fantastic.
Nowhere near the end of the journey. There's still quite a long way to go. And while there is definitely a streamlining of requirement of installers, the installer industry has also offered the renewable industry, especially domestic renewable industry, a lot of loyalty, a lot of hard work, a lot of time, and they haven't been rewarded for that. What they've had is a lot of stories about bad installations made very public, no good installations really sang. no good installer's really lauded for the work that they've done in developing not just the installation standards, but the product standards and the consumer awareness of how good some of these products are. And we as a certification body see absolutely outstanding installations and installer companies all the time. And they're jaded, because why should they continue? Because as has been said, there are less onerous technologies they can install. There are less bureaucratic schemes that they can be a member of. And actually, no one tells them how well they're doing, apart from the loyalty of their consumers, and once a year when we go out and say, gosh, that's nice. But I think the scheme could do a lot more for the guys that have actually invested a lot of time and a lot of heart in building a domestic renewable industry.
So is that sort of a story, let me just check, is that a story of sort of celebration and
There should be
recognition?
some celebration, because there hasn't been. What we've had is really bad installations made really public, and a disparity on the whole industry because of some very bad players. And what we haven't had is any celebration on the great work that's been done by industry.
Brilliant. So that's a really, at its best future, we're celebrating the really good work and recognising the effort and the passion, I think, as you say. That same or different, just a final opportunity. And then I'll pass to Ian to...
If we talk about MCS at its best, I would say, if I think back a couple of years and think forward to now, to me, it's the lack of conversation with industry bodies and installers saying, we wish MCS would go away. That has gone. Okay, and that's a massive change, and it is down to the new board, and it is down to Ian and his team. So great strides, well done.
So it's gone from go away to you're okay, you're welcome, and actually now how do we work forward? Brilliant, thank you. I think on that note then, shall I pass to you?
Thank you very much for very kind comments. My glass is half full, so I'm going to take them all. So that's words of encouragement, and I think for my team who are here, the members of my team, you're hearing it. So we're doing the right thing. We need to continue to do the right thing, and so thank you again. So thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Ian.